Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we are beginning Deuteronomy chapter 5. Now, as you start chapter 5, you're moving into the heart of Moses' giving of the law to the Israelites. We've already mentioned several times in our study so far that Deuteronomy is the second statement of the law. It's been 40 years since the law was given at Mount Sinai. The Israelites are now on the bank of the Jordan River, ready to cross over to possess the promised land. The wilderness wanderings are over. These are the children of the original generation. And so Moses is renewing the covenant with them. He is renewing the covenant with God for them. And so he states the law again. But the heart of that law begins in chapter 5. The first 4 chapters, as we've already seen, were sort of an introduction. Chapters 1 through 3, you recall, Moses sort of recites a quick history of the 40 years of wilderness wanderings, how God has brought them to this point, and how they've already possessed some land on the east side of the Jordan. Chapter 4 is a prologue to the giving of the law itself. In chapter 4, Moses lets them know, and this is a theme that will be repeated throughout the book, but Moses lets them know that the foundation of the law is faithfulness to the Lord your God. You shall worship only the Lord your God. He and He alone is God. And now, having given these 4 chapters of introduction, now chapter 5 begins the heart of the giving of the law. Notice how it begins. Verse 1. Moses summoned all Israel and said, "Hear, Israel, the decrees and the laws I declare in your hearing today. Learn them and be sure to follow them." So this summoning is an official gathering of the people, a solemn occasion, a sacred moment to hear clearly the law, the instruction God is giving to them, and to commit themselves to living by it, to obeying the laws of God, following His instruction. Now, Moses ties what he's doing now on the bank of the Jordan River with what happened 40 years ago at Mount Sinai. Notice what it says in verse 2. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. Now, Horeb is another name for Sinai. It's one in the same mountain. So he's recalling that episode 40 years ago. After the Exodus, Moses brought the people to the mountain of God, Mount Sinai, and said, God made a covenant with us there. But it was not with our ancestors that the Lord made this covenant, but with us, with all of us who are alive here today. Now, you recall at Mount Sinai, it was the original generation, the parents of these Israelites now. But Moses is saying it was not just with your parents God made that covenant. He made it with you as well. That's why we're renewing it today. So he's linking what they're doing today with what happened at Mount Sinai. As God made the covenant with your parents, with the former generation, He also made it with you. And we are renewing that covenant today. The same one that was made at Sinai, you are a part of that, and it has been renewed this very day. The Lord spoke to you face to face out of the fire on the mountain. Now at that time, I stood between the Lord and you to declare to you the word of the Lord, because you were afraid of the fire and did not go up. And this is what God said. He reminded them of how 40 years ago their parents had said to Moses, we don't want to see God face to face. We can't bear that. You go up and talk with God, and then you come and tell us what He said. Moses was the intermediary between them and God. Moses reminds them of this, but he says it is with God the covenant was made. I was just the go-between. It was with God the covenant was made, and you are making the covenant with God too. You know, we understand this, don't we? For instance, oftentimes when we gather in our churches to worship, we participate in the Holy Communion or the Lord's Supper. And we remember that original Passover when Jesus said, this is my body given for you, meaning the bread. This is my blood shed for you, meaning the cup. And He gave them that ritual that we still practice today to symbolize His sacrifice for them. Now, we still celebrate it today, and we are linked with what Jesus did for us 2,000 years ago. We are linked by faith. We remember it in the sacrament, in the Lord's Supper. We remember what He did, and we are linked with it by faith, knowing that we are part of that salvation community through believing in Jesus. Well, this is similar to what Moses was doing with the Israelites. He said, God made a covenant with your parents at Mount Sinai, but you are a part of it. And as you renew the covenant today, you are linking with what happened at Mount Sinai 40 years ago. It is your covenant too. You are the covenant people of God. And just as I spoke for God then and gave the law to your parents, so I speak for you. So I speak for God today to give you those commandments again. So you see, it's a renewal of the covenant. Mount Sinai on the banks of the Jordan River. Mount Sinai covenant being repeated and renewed. And then he goes into verse 6. He begins to state the terms, the requirements of the covenant. And of course, he's going to begin with the 10 commandments. From verses 6 on, he's going to restate the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments is given in two places in the Bible. In Exodus chapter 20 at Mount Sinai, and here again in Deuteronomy chapter 5 on the east bank of the Jordan River. So in our next 5-minute session, we'll start looking at this statement again of the 10 commandments, the same as they were given 40 years ago. They haven't changed, but Moses is restating them as he brings the people into a renewal of the covenant. So be with us for our next session in our 5-minute Bible study in Deuteronomy as we begin looking at Moses restating for them and re-giving to them the 10 commandments.